my previous role, my actual role is not more like a developer, but just to show you that I'm not 100% wrong. So I had a very active day here in contributing to Icinga Web. I think they revoked most of my changes afterwards, but to give a little impression that I basically know what I'm talking about, hopefully. Just to say, the latest version is Icinga Web 2.3.4. It's a couple of days old. There are also a couple of security issues covered by that release. We also did backports to, I think, 2 or 3 releases. I don't know for sure. So definitely please take care that you are on the latest release if you're using Icinga Web 2. So just I did before a quick poll. Who is using Icinga Web 2 already? OK, that's great. Is somebody still using Icinga Web 1? In common with Icinga Web 2? Did I see the same hands, or it was kind of? OK. Before I do, I think a longer demo part, I just would like to tell you a little bit what our story behind Icinga Web 2 is, what our motivation is behind it. So first of all, you know all that. You have seen that before. It's the thing where we started. So as we forked Nagios, it's someday. And we started with this CGI thing. And for some small environments, it's still absolutely valuable to use it. So we still ship it. We still have the classic UIs. But working with it, and especially do, I don't know, setting a downtime or acknowledgement 3 issues at once with the old classic UI it's horrible. So therefore, mostly Ricardo, one of the Icinga team members, invested a lot of work in the old classic UI, so this is what we still have right now. He brought some bleeding new features like a multi-select, where we met a couple of users say, I migrated to Icinga. I said, what is the reason? Yeah, because I have a multi-select on the services. So for some people, it was just enough to select 3 services and say acknowledge. So it was a big help. So he's still working on that. Definitely our approach today goes into Icinga Web 2. So the problem with the interface is it was really hard to extend. So what you can do is you can extend the navigation bar and put your iframe into your whatever, show your own software. It had kind of a user management, so you can use contacts and contact groups and limit specific views on that, but it was not so good. Usage on mobile devices was very tough. And it also has to run on the core machine. You could do some tricks to mount the status stat and retention dot on another host and use SSH to submit events to the command part, but usually it runs on the same host. And also it's an heavy I/O writing the status and retention all the time. So if you have a large environment using the old CGIs, it's very horrible. So we ended up, I think, a half year after we forked from Nagios, we had Icinga Web 1, which was also based on PHP with an Agabi framework down there. And we tried to cover the issues we saw before with the old classic UI. It means multi-tenancy, user management, having more filterable views and stuff like that. And at this time, these RIA-rich internet applications were very fancy. So we choose to go with XJS. And in our idea, it was we just have to place a couple of buttons and that's it. It didn't work out so well. So the interface works. So we still have people worked out there. But at the end, we spent a lot of time fixing the XJS bugs all the time. So we had less time for bringing new features. We worked for every new version comes with JavaScript, whatever. It didn't work at some point with a specific browser version. There's still a lot of people using very, very old Internet Explorer things. And this is really tough. Another thing which we learned is we had XML configuration with Icinga Web 1. It sometimes was hard to find people. Where can I add the LDAP credentials or connect to an Active Directory? We had these cache configuration problems. So we had these clear cache thing, which produced a lot of work in the support because people asked they changed something, but it didn't work so far. And we had a lot of framework overhead getting from these XJS. And the API we had, so we had kind of a SOAP API. Somebody used the SOAP API of Icinga Web 1? So you see how popular it was. The basic concept of SOAP is not so bad, but it's a little bit over-engineered. Ends up that nobody has a clue how it works and is not using it, except you are a Java developer. Then you have to deal with it at some point, perhaps. And then we started to have kind of a mobile app, which is based on Sencha Mobile. It was more JavaScript mobile app. But as you see at the iPhone model we use in that screenshot, it's not the newest version. I think it's the iPhone 3, whatever. So we had this. We invested a couple of hours in that prototype. We had it online. It still works, but we came to the point it's not super good. So we learned a lot. And this is always the thing. If you do something which perhaps not works out super well, you learn a lot. And this is what we did, hopefully. So things we learned is keeping framework overhead at a minimum. So dealing with all these XJS and stuff, we learned that the more frameworks you have, the boring it gets, getting everything together all the time. Usable on any devices, so responsible web is kind of a thing today. Take care that your web interface works on an iPad, on an iPhone, and on a typical desktop computer. Easy to set up and use. This means from the configuration perspective, right now we have this single key value thing, how you can configure Icinga Web 2, which hopefully makes it much, much easier. We don't have these cache things, so if you change something, make a reload, you have it. And we also have an easy API where you can interact with Icinga Web 2. The architecture, the idea behind Icinga Web 2 at the very early stage of thinking about how we can do it better than before was that we were thinking about that authentication, database providers, all that stuff is kind of a basic framework job. So the framework has to provide the basic things for other modules. And therefore, we decided that also the monitoring, which is hopefully the core feature for Icinga Web 2, doing monitoring, is kind of a module. So if we ship Icinga Web 2, this is when you download it or use the package, you get Icinga Web 2, the basic framework. You get monitoring, which is a module, and you get docs, which is a module. So you can disable them. Then you just have that part of user authentication, and you have your database providers and resources and users and groups, but you don't have any monitoring. It works pretty similar to a WordPress plugin, where you can just put it in a specific directory, enable it. I'll show you later how that works, and then you have it. And this was the basic idea. These are the modules we ship right now. We have a couple of them also available on Icinga Exchange, which is the business process, which is something for Nagios, is something is using this map thing. We have something for PNP. There are a couple of other prototypes. We have Icinga Director, which is Tom talking about that later on, which is also kind of a Icinga Web 2 module. And we have plans for more. So in the making is something for Elasticsearch, also a smaller graph for Graphite, and a couple of things we plan to integrate into Icinga Web 2. We also have something for ticketing system, which is named generic TTS. You can just enable the model, configure kind of a regex where you want to search for a specific ticket number, and then can show you ticket in the detail view of Icinga Web 2. So this is also, I come to that later perhaps in another slide. The roadmap is like extending Icinga Web 2 with more modules and making it easier integrating your stuff you have. So the key features, we developed it from scratch. So everything we had before, I would not say we throw it away. We still have it in the Git, but we didn't use it. So we started from scratch and thinking about how we can make it fast and easier. It's based on PHP, Send Framework 1, and jQuery. And you can also vagrant it. So just download, clone the Git. Also, the vagrant boxes Michael mentioned before have Icinga Web 2 included. Vagrant up, and that's it. It's really easy to extend. So Eric planned to give you a little bit of an introduction how you can write a module. And we also have a documentation how that works, how you can write your own stuff and integrate your data. I'm not able to do it because it would take hours without success. But it's very easy to write your own models and extend Icinga Web 2. We have a simple ini configuration, so all the stuff like resource types, users, and everything, etc., is in just tiny files, and it's really easy to find hopefully easy, right, to find the right spot where you configure your stuff. We have a very small footprint compared to the old version, and something where we invested a lot of energy is authentication and authorization. So you can authenticate against multiple mechanisms. You can against an LDAP, Kerberos, whatever. You can also use that methods in a chain way. Means you look up the Active Directory. If it's not available because it's broken, you're still able to log into your Icinga Web with an internal database user. So you can do a lot. I also show you a little bit how you can really have kind of a role-based access control. You can limit the user only to see a specific hosts matched to specific patterns. So it's really, really flexible in granting different views on your data. Also grant the access to specific Icinga Web 2 modules to specific user groups. But I'll show you that in the demo how that works. We support Icinga 1 and Icinga 2 with MySQL and Postgres database. That is what we have right now. Right now, we're using, for sending in commands, we're using still the command API, so there are plans for using more the Icinga 2 API in the future, but this is what we have right now. We have a basic API where you can access all the data in Icinga Web 2. You can do a JSON or a CSV export, which I'll show you later, and we can have also the ability to do everything in the URL. If you work with Icinga Web 2, perhaps you know that sometimes it was hard to just share the same view to another colleague because the URL was stored in your context. And now everything, so every single view you have in Icinga Web 2 is fully stored in the URL, so you can take the whole thing, chat it to another one, and he gets exactly the same view. We have an installer where you can install Icinga Web 2. If it's not pre-configured from your packaging system, you can use that. And what we have, what a lot of people really like, is we have a CLI. So you can access everything Icinga Web provides with a CLI, which is, I think, it's really pretty cool. And how that looks like, I show you now. Hopefully. Can you see that? No. That's great. OK. So first log on to Icinga Web. This is probably the starting dashboard. If you log into Icinga, we have a pre-configured dashlets, service problems, recently recovered services. What we don't have is these old bar on the top where you can see 20,000 services OK, because it doesn't make sense in some way. Perhaps it's nice in the morning to see everything all right, but there is no real business value and see everything is all right. So we focused on showing the people what is not OK. It means you have these notification items here on the left-hand side. And what is important to understand with Icinga Web 2 is the basic navigation design purpose of how you interact with the web interface, that you always have a master detail from the left to the right. So every item you use, you click, you want to inspect, open up the detail view on the right-hand side. You can go from host to service, from service back to host. So you can kind of drill down and also drill to another object. And you can also use the browser history to go back again. Means we go here to a specific service which has a problem. We see the host here. We see all the other services on that host, for example, if they have a problem, if they are OK or not. We can go back on the disk check. And then we can use also the browser history to get the exact same navigation elements we had before. We have, some people don't know, kind of a multi-select. So if you press Shift button and mark more than one line, you have kind of a multi-submission where you can schedule downtime, acknowledge, or add a comment to multiple hosts and services, which is pretty nice if you would like to acknowledge a couple of services at once, so we don't have to go from every service to another and do so. Another thing which was hard in the old interface, like the typical thing, rescheduler check. It was reschedule now, force recheck, yes. My 5 clicks, you spend a day to that. And right now it's just 1 click, check now, and that's it. Perhaps that's not rocket science, but it will save you a day if you work really heavily with monitoring system to make it easier. And that's probably our first goal to do so. The dashboard is configurable. I'll show you later what you can do with it, how you can add dashlets. The standard view, which we think is the most important one, is the host and service problems. I think this is what you typically work with. You log on, you see that something is wrong, or perhaps you get a notification on your pager, iPhone, email, whatever. You log onto your system and see what's going on. Means host and service problems is the most important one. So you go there, you have them, you can acknowledge them immediately. Out for lunch, which is a typical acknowledgement if you have a critical issue, and that's it. Just to make this one easy and not go from one side to another, this is, I think, pretty simple. It also reloads every couple of seconds without refreshing the whole screen. Now I forced it pressing the reload button, but all the elements, you can see that the numbers here are refreshed all the time. So it's every time it's reloading, we never see probably an outdated screen. And if you shut down the web server, so it means if your HTTP server is broken, you get an error bar that the web server is not connected. So we make sure that you not have an outdated, I don't know, screenshot where everything is green and the company is burning down. So this hopefully should help to make sure that every time you have a current view on your system. You can also filter things, which is very neat. But before I go to the service grid, this is another interesting view. This is new to Icinga. We have this service grid where you can see hosts and services in a grid view, which helps a lot if you have, for example, central services a lot of other components rely on. You can see this single vertical line that probably this system is responsible for an outage in other systems. So it helps a lot doing relation. If you have more than this small demo setup, you have kind of a joystick navigation here in the top left bar where you can navigate through your service map. In the overview area, we have the things you are used to. We have hosts, services, host groups, service groups. People use it. I know a lot of people never use service groups. I don't know who's using service groups. Okay, I would say, I don't know, 30 to 70%. I don't know. Not a lot of people use it. I think it's pretty nice to have kind of service groups, group specific services together. But I know that not so many people are using it outside. The hosts and services view give you the typical thing. Everything you have in your monitoring system, you can configure how many lines you would like to see. You can configure how you would like to sort them, or just can go through your services with a navigation. It's also really fast if you have hundreds or hundreds of thousands services in that web interface. You can just click through, and it works pretty good. We have the possibility to filter every specific view. Means we have this small bar on the top, and let's say I'm in services, I'm looking for MySQL, for example. Then you just do a quick filter service display name to MySQL, so you see every MySQL services, and then say, okay, I would only interested in MySQL services which are not okay. Then you can go to this small filter button and say, okay, I already have this one, so okay, it's sensitive service name and service to MySQL, and I would like to add another one, and say, this is an AND. I do an AND. And say service state is 0. Then you only see critical services with the name MySQL. So you can have chain filters with and or do your rules, which specific hosts. Also, you can work with custom attributes. So if you enrich your configuration data with a runtime state, if it's in production or development, and you want to make sure that you only have in your dashboards specific filters, you can do so. And if you filtered out through that what's important for you, in this case, you're interested in every MySQL with a critical state, you can store them. So you can say, I would like to create a dashlet, add to dashboard, and say it's Icinga Camp Amsterdam MySQL. I can decide which dashboard I would like to choose to edit, and this way I choose current incidents. And that's it. And I go to the dashboard, and I can see here this dashlet in the small side. If you have a better resolution, it's probably on the right or on the left-hand side, depends, because if you just reduce the screen size, then we go to a single column view. So it depends on your screen. You can also able to show a third column on the right-hand side. So it depends on your resolution. But it makes it easy to create individual dashboards for your users. You can share them. You can also work on the dashboards and see the others in there, which are usually just URLs you can configure. You can see the full filter rule here in the URL, which is a modification filter, and you can add them to your dashboards. Okay. Another thing Business process. Business process is a module for Icinga Web 2. So who is using it? Business process model? Couple of them. Who has no idea what it is? Okay, a couple of you. The basic idea behind business process model that we still have this typical host-service relation, but in a company or an environment, it's usually more than one service. So for instance, you have kind of a web shop, and you need a MySQL database for it. You need an application server. You need a couple of load balancers. So you have multiple hosts and services responsible for a specific service. And in this example, the service is not a MySQL database. The service is the service you make money with, the service you sell to your customer, your web shop, outside, whatever. But it consists of a couple of services that they work together. On the other hand, it's a different perspective on how you see your monitoring, because if you have 3 load balancers, for example, somebody in the ops team is responsible for bringing up a load balancer if it's broken, but for your service consumer, for your service user, it's absolutely unimportant if one of these load balancers is down. So they are interested in getting a service view. And what business process does, it takes your hosts and services and you can create rules. Means you can say, I hope you can read it here. We have an end rule and say, okay, for that process, we need MySQL server and we need a web server. These 2 things as a logical unit we need. And for the web server, for example, we have here an OR rule. Can you see that? Which can be created using the web UI, or also you can write it in a text file. And also, if one of these web servers is down, your business process is still valid. So for your service consumer, they still have a working service. For you in the ops team, it's important that you send out notifications, that you work on the problem, that you bring up the second web server, but your service is still okay. And that's the main purpose of the business process add-on. Getting a different view on services and hosts, and especially really create business services. If you drill down on the web interface, you can always see the coloring which is responsible for. And you can also do kind of a simulation and say, okay, right now here, it's important that we have a MySQL server and a web server. And here we have an OR rule, which means one of these web servers has to be up. And in that OR rule, we have another AND, means to be up, the load must be okay. I don't know if it makes sense that the load must be okay to be green, but okay, let's assume that's super important to have a good load. And we check HTTP. So if the HTTP responds, these are the 2 important checks for the business process. We can just change it and do kind of a simulation and think, okay, what happens if the load increases and load is not okay? So we can just simulate a specific state, say it's red, and then you see that the whole business process is red, because it changes that one important part of the availability chain changed. So both web servers are down, and then your service is down. And on that service, on top of it, you can have a check plugin, which is shipped with it, and then you can check your business process and perhaps alert on that. Means perhaps at night you are not interested in if, I don't know, from your load balancer or from your application server farm, 3 nodes die, but if the service is not up and running, then you're interested for. You can also do something like, you have 5 application servers. I want to have a critical if only 3 of 5 are working. You can work with numbers. So it's really interesting. You can also reuse this component. So you can create, for instance, a business process for DNS, because DNS is perhaps usually DNS is an important component. So Chris, it's a freaking DNS problem to which you're pointing.
Michael will fix it.
Michael will fix it? Okay. So usually it's helpful if DNS works, okay? So usually, if you're not using IPv4 so you create this service describing your DNS cluster, DNS environment, if this is working, and then you can use these process DNS in all the other processes. So you don't have to configure it again and again. So you configure your database farm once, you configure your load balancers, your uplinks, whatever is important for you once, and then reuse these components. Because if your database farm is broken, then it could be a relation to a couple of other things in your company. It's well documented, so check this out, play with the configuration. It's very easy because it's just a single text file. You can write these rules, or also use the web interface to do so. You can create new business processes using the web interface. It also generates a text file in the backend. So it's a module. It's available on Icinga Exchange. Just download it, install it to Icinga Web 2, and that's it. It's pretty nice. Another thing is, I forgot before, if you have a plugin monitoring your service on top, you can also do kind of an SLA report on top of that. It means you can monitor your business service and not your host server thing and say, my service, my web shop was available for 99 dot whatever percentage per year. This makes it really helpful. So if you have never played with it, I would really say, please do so. A question?
Yeah, so it's not actually a check of whether the service is available, but rather it's a model that reasons about whether the service should be available, like 3 out of 5 servers are up, so the service must be working. Is it like that?
Can you repeat the question again to make sure I got it right?
Is this basically making a model about your service? So it's not really checking the service itself, like DNS is up, but it's rather reasoning about 3 out of 5 servers, so it must be working.
It's right. It's a model. So we have all the basic data for the processes. Icinga is responsible for checking in your configured interval, and at that point, the plugin evaluates the process. It checks all the needed states, and then it comes to the result: service is okay or not. But it's not rechecking all the dependent service at this time. It's just an interpretation of the current state of the service that comes to the result of it's okay or not. Okay. This is it with the business process. So if you have any questions later on, we can do so, but I think I'm hopefully good in time. Just the same with host groups, service groups. It's the same design principle. If you have your host group Linux servers, you would like to see what's pending here. You go to the left side, you go to that host, you see the other services. You can also click on history. You see any event happened on a specific server stored in the database. Everything happened, so acknowledgements, downtimes, notifications, you have that in one view. And if you would like to go back, that's it. And if you also want to say, this is my view, grab the URL, and your colleague accept the same view what you selected in the previous screen. Okay? So what's important? We have, I think Blarium talked about the graphing integration. We have that Grafana where you can have the full Grafana. I'm not sure if I started it. Yes. It's not the thing where you have a small, tiny graph in the service detail. That's a different thing. I think you mentioned that before with a link, right? But it also gives you the chance to just jump over to Grafana in the same interface. The same is with PNP and Graphite. We have Nugwiz if you're using it. Who's using Nugwiz? It's dying or it's still living? Is it in the process of dying? It's my personal opinion, because this is a typical thing we say we can have maps, and say people crazy, I can have maps, but they say, but you have to draw them. So really? It's not automatically, and no, you have to also redraw a server if you change it. It's a lot of work. So usually having great maps, it's a great pitch in a discussion, say we have these great maps, but if the people see the work they have to do to have a great map, it's the same with reporting. We want reports. What do you like to see? I would like to have everything. No, you don't want that. So just ship a 50 gigabyte PDF and they don't want anything anymore. That's just a little bit of my impression. But I know, because that's the reason why we built it. I think Thomas built the module, the Nugwiz module, right? You did it for a customer?
Just the module, not Nugwiz.
Pardon?
Just the module, not Nugwiz.
Yeah. Just the module to integrate it. So there are people out there using it. I have the feeling that less and less people are really taking care of maps. Metrics is a much more important thing. Taking care of the metrics, and the thing Blarium showed before with working with annotations. I think there's much more value in working with trends and metrics than looking at these maps. But anyway, for a screen in the office, it looks very nice. Not this map. Okay, I have 10 minutes. I would like to show you how you can create users and user roles. Just a short example that you get a feeling how that works. We go to configuration and see authentication. So we have roles, we have users, we have user groups, and I just start with a user that I can work in the demo. It's I say it's IMS demo. That's it. No, never. Then I would like to create a role. A role is just an empty thing where you can describe privileges. So I create a role and say it's IMS super role, and the user which I would like to put in that role is the AMS demo. And then I can say what the permission set for a specific user, or also can do that for user groups. And you see that we have a lot of basic privileges or basic permissions coming with Icinga Web 2, but also the modules you can install to Icinga Web 2 have their own privilege set. For example, you can see down there that Nugwiz has its own privileges. It's just a module, but you can say, I want to allow my user to see the maps, but he's not allowed to edit them. These privileges coming with the modules, and you can probably control your whole environment. Also, if the data use is perhaps not from you, but the privileges you can set is really flexible. For example, you can say you are not allowed to see a specific module. But the thing I would like to show you is limiting the view on Icinga on just the specific host elements. So I say for IMS demo, they are allowed to see everything, so it can do everything, but I want them only to see a specific group of servers. And then I say, OK, allow every module, but then I can create kind of a filter. They say the filter is hostname Icinga. Means I create a role where every user in that role only is allowed to see host names with Icinga in it. So I create the role. That's it. Then does it make sense? Everybody understands what I'm doing? So just a role. I put a user into that role and say, OK, this role is limited to a specific amount of hosts. So I start so. Say IMS demo. And that's it. So I only see the hosts I'm allowed to see. And for that user, for your customer, for the department, he has no clue that there's more going on in the monitoring system. So it's his view, and that's it.
Does that work for the business services you mentioned earlier as well? Business process?
Business process is, I think there's a rule to see them or not. Thomas, do you know that? The business process, I think it's in your stash somewhere. If you can grant specific business process maps or specific process applications?
No, it's not really. I already implemented the storage information. So in the process itself, is stored which role is required to view this process. It's just some front end GUI work involved to allow you to say on the process, I want to allow that rule.
Okay.
And as we are currently redoing all those forms,
Okay.
it has to wait until those are finished.
Okay. So it means it's
Advanced, just not
it,
right now.
so it's definitely coming because you're not the only one asking for that. So it means you can say to see that business process, you have to be in a specific role. I don't know. Asking Thomas for the right time is difficult. Sometime, somewhere. It will be there. But it comes always, sometimes a little bit late. OK, but this is just an example. But you can see the user has still all the modules. And now I change that. Say, OK. I take away that one where I am, here. I change it again, go to that role, and say, OK, he is allowed to see the monitoring module. I'd have to find it. Module monitoring. I update the role. Turn it off and on again. And then you see all the other modules like graphing and so on, maps are gone. So you only see this one. So you have a chance to install every module, everything you need, all the hosts in a single interface, and then configure your roles for your specific needs. So it's really flexible in that. And it makes sense, take some time, play around with the privileges, permissions, and roles, because you can really create an individual set of information for specific users without seeing the other stuff. Okay, I have 5 minutes, so any more questions for the web interface?
The user auth, the roles, etc., can they be plugged into an LDAP?
Yes, it's included. So you can create authentication, then you can create backend types for external database or LDAP if the PHP module is installed. So you can just use the web interface and add your LDAP provider.
So you can have multiple backends?
Yes, you can have multiple backends and you can chain them. There was another hand.
Is it something like SSO, single center?
You can use, but usually you use then right now external mechanisms. So if you have Kerberos, use Apache and use mod Kerberos to do so, and then we can work with the external remote user environment. Perhaps in the future we'll have something internally, but right now you can use your favorite web server to the single sign-on authentication and hand over the user to Icinga Web. Works pretty good. Another question?
Let's say you're monitoring a Linux server and there are updates available. For my job, I do have Overview with available up-to-get package updates.
Okay.
Is it also possible to insert updates in Icinga instead of the command line?
Mean that you force an apt-get update from Icinga?
No, just Linux updates itself inside Icinga.
I'm not sure if I get the question right. So it means would you like to see if there something needs to be updated?
Yeah, it's like it shows the cron job in the cron tab.
Yeah.
So it says like for critical or non-critical security updates available.
Yes.
Instead of installing it via SSH,
Yeah.
install it in Icinga, maybe via clickable link or something.
Means that you, I don't know, in Icinga click and say install that packages.
Yeah.
Right now there's not, but you can do it. So there are a couple of plugins where you can check apt or whatever to see if there are updates necessary. But this is something needs to be a custom module, for example, because then you have to take care about authentication, how Icinga Web can log into that machine or run a Puppet job, which is perhaps the way you can do it. But right now there's no module for it. But I think it should be doable to write your own module and bring in your update data and just force it. But there's nothing included right now. Okay, then I just have 5 minutes left. I show a little bit of the CLI. The CLI, named Icinga CLI. Oh my God. My speaker is disabled, so I don't know why. Whatever. Okay. So Icinga CLI has the basic monitoring feature, but also the other modules you can install. Here you see the director. Thomas will tell you more about it later on. Generate TTS. All the modules can also integrate themselves in the CLI. What you can do, just to get an idea, right now we have a couple of modules enabled. You go to the CLI, say Icinga CLI module list. So you see all the modules enabled in Icinga Web 2. You see their version number and say, OK, don't want to have NUGWIZ anymore. Maps are gone. You say Icinga CLI module disable NUGWIZ. And to check it before, we have it here, maps. That's it. And then it's gone. So we can just deal with all the modules using the CLI, enable them, disable them. Another thing is you can also get the information about your current monitoring items. So Icinga CLI monitoring. If you go there, see what's available, we say list. You get all the services you have right now, which is usually too much for your terminal. And say list problems. Then you only see the problems elements you have in your monitoring system. Then you would say, I would like to know a little bit more. You can say monitorings verbose. Then you see more information about your disk check and stuff like that. And then you would say, because I'm a CLI lover, I would to have a refresh all the time. You can say watch 1 or 12. It's not a good example, 12. and then you get a refresh all the time. So if you love the CLI, this is pretty cool to work with it and see what's going on with your system. You can also filter them, means Icinga CLI monitoring list service ping for, then you see your ping checks. So it uses the same data provider like the web interface does. It's the same data, just a different output. You can also say, I would like to have this as a JSON format because I would use it in a report. You say format, damn it. No format, damn it, so damn it. JSON, which JSON is the substitute of damn it. Use this one. You can use the same in the web interface. For example, no, not the director, sorry. You go to services, go this one. No, that's not a good example. Go here and say format is JSON. Then you see the JSON file. You can use a wget and get the data out of it. Or if you're interested in doing reports and you would like to get an idea how Icinga Web 2 works and interacts with the database, you can say format SQL, and then you see all the SQL statements Icinga Web uses to grab the data out of the database. You can also do, so this is really nice. If you would like to have an introspection with the optimizer of the database. Also having a CSV, work with it in Excel. You have your thing. So if it's well formatted, you have your data, you can draw your graphs in Excel, whatever you want to do. What data is. That's it for the demo. Questions? Somebody has any questions?
In Icinga Web 1, you have the integration with Jasper reports.
Yes.
Will that be coming in Icinga 2 also?
I don't know. Good question. So right now we don't have any plans. So what we plan is have more reporting in Icinga Web 2. We could just have right now the activity report. So we plan to do so. But right now there's no plan to integrate Jasper better. So they still work because they still use the same database model, but we don't have an integration right now with Icinga Web 2. So the basic idea is that our experience is if we come to that point where people really customize the reports to their needs with their corporate identity and specific groups, it's kind of a different focus. But we want to make it easier, and we are thinking about having a basic schedule in Icinga Web 2. What you still can do is, for example, I know that's not the perfect answer, but I answer something else, and perhaps we all forget the original question. I know that will not work. No, I know it. Where is it? For example, go here to the services, and you can have a PDF. Also, filtered views are working with that. And you can use, no, we cannot use it. Block renderer. I think that was my submission from the slide you see in the previous one. So, okay, let's assume you can generate a PDF. I'm working on the Git master, so I think it works. So I just put it on before and didn't test it. You can generate a specific PDF all the time using a cron, but this is not what Jasper is. So Jasper is much more. To be honest, we don't know. There are definitely plans to provide more because what we have right now is not enough. We know that. So Jasper is still working, but we will figure out in the future how reports would be fit in the best way.
I integrate the PMP for Nagios module in Icinga Web 2. Will be this available for Grafana 2 future?
Yeah, that is the one thing is what Blairim said. You can just integrate a specific link to Grafana, but there's also a prototype on where you can show the graphite graph like the PNP graph in the service detail.
Yes.
So we have it. I don't know, is it in the Git somewhere? I know that we didn't release it. Pardon? Yeah, GitHub Icinga, there is one. I Icinga Web 2 module graphite, I think that's the name, kind of that. So it's still there, but there's work to do. But it works. We have to think about how the templates, because PNP comes with all the templates, so we have to do some work there. But we definitely plan to have a small overview graph in Icinga Web 2 where you can directly access the graphite. We have to figure out where's the border, because it doesn't make sense to replace Grafana because it's something else. But I think you definitely can try out the module. I saw it. I don't have it here in my demo system, but it works. So you can just place it in your Icinga Web directory and enable it, and then you can connect to Graphite. Works.
Question is just answered.
OK, great. More questions? OK, so I have to switch the screen before I end. Looks better than the exception. Thank you very much.